I'm not going to give myself that problem tomorrow morning.
We'll just go with Captain Coots can change direction quickly. That'll do.
This is the official Leeds United podcast.
So, please welcome Leeds United's Head of Medicine and Performance, Rob Price. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good, thank you. Not too bad for a late on a Thursday evening.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate you joining us. Obviously, you just mentioned there it's late on Thursday. We had the game at Millwall on Sunday, followed by a midweek fixture away at Hull. How's that from your perspective in terms of recovery and player welfare and whatnot?
It's pretty tough. You look at the fact that, Hull played on Friday night, so they had an extra 2 days recovery on us before the game. And 2 days turnaround is the minimum that you ever really want to do. So to do it twice in a week is pretty tough for the players and, also for the staff as well, who put the work in to try and turn them around. So we got back to the training ground here probably about 12:15, 12 this morning. And then we were back in the training ground again at 9 this morning, just making sure that the players are ready and, everything's set up ready for them to go. And one of the things you get when you have these quick turnarounds, there's lots of bumps and bruises and, things that need assessing and dealing with and trying to give the manager enough information that he can start to make plans ready for Saturday. Because, there's a lot of work that they do and that the coaching staff do that they need to know who's going to be available. They need to know who's going to be recovered. And the more information we can give them at the earliest possible opportunity allows them to make their decisions and make them with more accuracy.
I really want to talk about that relationship between manager and yourself and then a player in a moment in terms of communication. I'll come on to that in a minute. But just before we get there, what does it look like when you have games so close together? I mean, with regard to fitting in training. I mean, if they got back at God knows what time you got back on Monday from London, or if you got back Sunday night, I'm not sure. Is there opportunity to train before Wednesday? I mean, you obviously got to think about recovery from your perspective. What are those 2 days like between fixtures that close together?
Yeah, look, the actual recovery starts as soon as the game finishes. So there's things that go on in the dressing room. Our nutritionists make sure that they get, they've got products available to them immediately in the dressing room that's going to replenish some of the carbs, the protein, and some of the electrolytes and things that they've lost in the game. We then look at getting them in the ice baths. We did some ice baths down at Millwall that our kit men really take the hump because they've got to carry all the way down and enough ice to fill them. So the recovery process starts there. So straight in the dressing room, there's things that the players are doing. But whilst the ones who played are doing that work in the dressing room, the ones who haven't played, so the subs are unused, we're doing some work with them on the pitch to try and get them to the same level. We have a real look over the week of when the players have sprinted and when they've done high speed, and we want to expose them to some of that sprint. Because it reduces injury, believe it or not. That if you don't sprint players in a week, if you just rest them, they're more prone to injury when they have to sprint in the game. So we try and make sure, we've got the GPS on everyone, we've got the heart rates on everyone in the game, and for this session out on the pitch, to make sure then that when they come in on match day +1, that they're all at a similar level, that we don't need to be sprinting them people on Monday when we've got another game Wednesday. So we topped it all up on Sunday down at Millwall. We then got on the team coach to come back up. And again, we've got a nutritionist and a chef who provides the players straight away with a meal that again is of all the right amounts and things to make sure that their recovery is good. And then we're really keen when the team gets back. Sleep is one of the biggest things that we can look at for recovery. So we try not to bring the players in too early the next morning if it's been a late one. Fortunately, Millwall was a midday kickoff. Yeah. So we got back up here by about 8, so the players got a good night's sleep. Whereas last night, some of the players probably weren't getting in bed till 1:30, 2 o'clock. So we delayed training today to lunchtime so that they could have enough sleep. And we monitor that sleep. We actually we provided all the players with Oura rings, but I know a lot of them would use Whoop bands, and they use all these other metrics of sleep. And it's something that we try and monitor to make sure that they are getting enough. And that's not to say, it's not going to be, Matt, you didn't sleep enough last night, what you're doing. It's trying to educate them that sleep's really important and how we can help them, what's their sleep hygiene like? What time do they go to sleep? We talk to them about blue light. We talk to them about not having the TVs on at different times, etc. And that's not just this week, that's every week, in trying to make sure that the team are recovered and ready to go again.
Well, I suppose I should ask that question about communication now, really, because obviously everyone's different, but there is a pressure in a squad when you've potentially got new signings breathing down your neck that are trying to get into that starting 11, and maybe there's some players pick up a knock. I mean, do some players try to hide that, and it's your job to try and get that out of them, or so that you can communicate that to the manager? Do some players want to rush back from injury so they can try and get their place in that team? Like, is it difficult navigating that side of it and trying to make sure everyone is as honest and upfront with the condition of their bodies as possible?
Yeah, look, I mean, everything you've just said there is true. Obviously, players want to play every game. And there's times where they'll have had a knock or they've had a kick or they're carrying something or they're tight. And a lot of that comes down to the relationship that we have with the players, that they trust us. I think one of the big things is, I say to the players, I'm here to help you to play. I'm not here to stop you to play. And sometimes that'll mean I have to take them to a scan to actually prove that the damage they've got isn't sufficient, that we're going to keep them out, that it's safe to play and it's safe to continue. But a lot of that is the relationship, the soft skills of, we're around the players every day. I spend hours and hours and hours, and my staff do, where we talk to the players and we get that rapport. And I think they trust us that we're not going to pull anyone out, and we're not going to tell lies. We're not going to go and say, someone's injured or not injured. We're just truthful with what we say and what we report back to the manager. And that trust goes both ways. You'll occasionally get a player saying, look, I really don't want the coaching staff to know about this, but my hamstring, I think I might have done something. And you've got to say, look, that doesn't help the team, it doesn't help you, and we negotiate that before it goes any further. And, I don't think there's been a situation at Leeds where we've ever had to undermine that relationship, because the players have listened and trusted the medical staff that what we're doing is in their best interest, because we look after the players firstly and foremostly, and then the club is around that. But our main impact is on the players.
Well, speaking of players that you've kind of had the future of their career in your hands, Stuart Dallas is back in training after obviously a horrendous freak injury 18 months ago or so. What's that process been like? I mean, I've never seen or heard of even of a broken femur before. So, I mean, is that something you've dealt with before?
I don't think anyone's dealt with the injury that Stu had before. Yeah, I spoke with Stu earlier today, and I said, "Look, how much do you want me to mention about this?" Because we've been pretty quiet about it. We released the basics, and then we've just carried on with the rehab. And I think he's got to this stage now, and it's still. We've got to be clear. This is still a part of his rehabilitation. So joining in the training group does not mean that he's available to selection. Sure. Does not mean that he's going to be in a squad. We've still got to build up the volume of training. This is the first time he's had other players around him. And that's a different intensity. It's a different feel. You've got different perceptions going on around you. So it's still a part of the process. But, looking back to that day, and it's sort of imprinted on our mind, April 30th or whatever it was, 2022, and him and Jack Grealish just had a clash of needs, and we knew it was really significant because it's the first time I'd ever seen Stuart Dallas stay on the floor with anything. He's probably one of the toughest players we've ever come across. He actually had a fracture in his foot a couple of years ago, and he missed 2 days. He's that kind of player, and he's got the ability to block out playing and carry on, which is probably why he did so many consecutive appearances under Marcelo. So, we knew it was serious. We got him back in the dressing room and straight away told him, look, I think you fractured just around your knee. We went off to LGI where we got the x-rays and it was diagnosed. So most people think your femur is a long bone, but what he actually did was he knocked off the bottom of his femur on the outside. So there's two balls at the bottom of your femur that you've probably seen on a skeleton.
Sure, yeah,
and he completely broke one of those off.
Good Lord.
So at that stage, you're looking and going, okay, well, what are we going to do with this? And unfortunately, I've been in the game long enough that we got some really good contacts. So we managed to get hold of Andy Williams, who's probably the best knee surgeon in the UK, or the most renowned knee surgeon in the UK with dealing with these sort of incidents. Now, he was actually in France with his wife, and he agreed to fly back to come and see Stu. And we agreed as well, this wasn't just going to be Andy. There was another surgeon, Khalid Saraf, who works down there, who Andy works with, who's a trauma surgeon. So the next day, we got a private ambulance and we went down to London, and Stu underwent surgery, and it was a 7.5 hour procedure, which, is really, really long because they spent hours and hours and hours making sure that they aligned the joint, as best as they possibly could. And even at that stage then, we knew this was going to be, a minimum of 12 months. Yeah. Could be 24 months and probably going to be around 18 months. So we get into the stage now, he's around 16 months and a few days, and he's made the next step in his rehab, which is to get back in with the team and start doing part of the training. And there's all sorts of little, it probably annoys me, and I'm sure it annoyed Stuart, although he's never said that along the road you read things occasionally, oh, Dallas is finished, or Dallas is this, which it just isn't helpful when people don't know the true story. And it's been, we knew that at some stage, some of the screws that were in there to hold the fracture together, we'd have to take out. So we went and did that. And then just after Christmas, he ended up getting an infection in the knee, which isn't uncommon after 7.5 hours of surgery. And that then just delays your time to come back a little bit. It's not a setback. It's not anything else. It's just one of the things that happens. So we, sort of January, February, March, we couldn't progress him too much and move him on from there. But he's made steady progress. And I've got to give a lot of credit to the staff who work really closely with him, which is Henry McStay, who's our senior physio, and Ruben Crespo, who's our rehab fitness coach. They spend hours with Stu every day on improving really, really small things and all those small things add up to allow him to get back in with the team today. But, as I said, it's still part of the process, and he's still got a bit of a way to go. But it was, I've never seen today that all the players who were on recovery went out and gave him a little slap on the back as he was running out to train, because he's one of the biggest characters and the nicest guys within the squad that everyone respects and loves. So to see him back out on the pitch today was a good moment, but I don't think anyone will be really content until he's named in one of the squads.
All Leeds, aren't we? The official Leeds United podcast.
I mean, it shows an incredible strength of character as well to come back from something like that with the commitment and the well, I suppose the never say die attitude. Really, I mean, injury like that could genuinely be career ending, but it seems like he's going out of his way and he's going from strength to strength to try and make sure he gets back playing.
Yeah, I think all the players here, and not just Stu, have an unbelievable attitude to rehab and to doing things properly, and we're lucky to be blessed with really, really good staff. So those two I've already mentioned are fantastic, and we've got Daryl, Billy and Will who work with them as well, and our fitness staff. And what they do is, they give a lot of time to each of the players and a lot of thought, and a lot goes on behind the scenes that even the players don't perhaps know about, to make sure that we get these players back. And we get our statistics. We get our statistics every year, and what we have got here, we always have, or we've had since I've been here. I'm lucky enough, this is my 6th season. We have the lowest return to play times. So any injuries we do get back really quickly, and we've also got the lowest re-injury rates. So if they get back, generally they stay back. There's always going to be 1 or 2 re-injuries over the course of the season, but that's due to almost the tenacity, but the thoroughness of the staff looking after them, the testing that they do to make sure that they're ready to go back, because you don't want to expose them to being in games before they're ready, because that's when you get the re-injuries.
Is there a large part of your job that is psychological as well? And I mean that in terms of, obviously, players being out injured, and particularly players that re-injure themselves, there must be, and I've talked to Bridgie about this, a large degree of frustration that comes with that, and it might be difficult to motivate these players to come on, get back from this just one more time. But also, not just that. If obviously not listen to the show, but we had a running gag throughout some of the earlier shows that I broke my leg playing football a couple of years ago, and I haven't played since. And there's a weird bit with me where I'm not sure I want to. I'm not sure I want to go back into that competitive football and put myself in a situation where I might break it again. Now, I'm an actor, I'm not a professional, but is there an aspect of that there's some players that you might have to almost coax into believing in themselves again, or believing in their body again, I should say? Yeah,
100%. I think you've taught there psychology. There's loads of stuff that we do as the backroom staff. There's lots of psychology goes on with the players, and that's just about performance, whether that be about how they played at the weekend. But there's a lot more certainly mental health input now in the game than there was 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And some of the stick that players get is unacceptable.
Agreed.
And the effect on the players that the fans and the people outside and even people in the media don't see is what we're left to deal with. And we're the ones who are around the players and see how it affects them and see the effect that has on them, on the families and everything with it. And, we send players for outside mental health support, and we have mental health support within the club as well. But that's certainly becoming more and more prominent. And, the more of social media that's out there. And these are young players. We've got a really, really young squad that they've been brought up on social media, so they're used to being on it. So it's no point saying to them, well, don't go on it, because their life is built around social media. My kids, I've got kids at 21 and 17, and they're on TikTok all the time, and everything is through Snapchat, etc. So they're the same age as the players who are here. So why would we expect them to be any different? But then the abuse that they get and the things, and the bit that always amazes me is when it's abuse from our own fans.
Yeah.
I just don't get what we're trying to achieve or what they're trying to achieve.
In what way do you think that's helpful? Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the players are pretty robust and they have good support mechanisms around them. So a lot of them, their partners are really strong, their families are really strong, and they've been going through this for some time. But we do offer support as a club as well. And if a player has had a bad game, it's never because they want to have a bad game. They're giving everything they can to try and do everything right. And
the thing, I think, what I'm interested in is that whenever a player has a bad game, they don't need telling. They'll be their worst, harshest critics.
They are the harshest critics, and they don't need telling that they've had a bad game. And you know what football's like in the dressing room. If someone's had a mistake in a game, they get ribbed for it, right. And the players will have a go. If they've had a bad game, nobody says anything to them. It's more, come on, you're okay, let's do, forget that one, let's move on and go again. And the players support each other, and the staff support the players in it. And I think to have that mix right, we've got a really good dressing room. There's a lot of the players now are very, very supportive of each other, and have taken players like Archie under the wing. That he's a young kid. He's a 17-year-old kid who's playing every week at the minute in the championship, and he's been brilliant. But at some stage, someone's going to have a go at him.
Right.
But he's got that support network around him that his family are well versed in it, and everyone else. But the players, really look after each other to make sure that they don't get too down.
You mentioned Archie Gray. What special sort of thought process is going with him right now? Obviously, you just said there he's 17 years old. He's played just about every minute. Is there a caution with him? You know, that we don't want to overplay him.
Yeah, we look at his loads and his wellness and everything out, and certainly coming up to the last international break, there were signs that he was being perhaps a little bit towards the edge of being overplayed, overtrained. So we ended up having to withdraw him from the England squad, which is something that we don't like to do.
Yeah.
But it just actually, it got to the stage where he wouldn't have been able to perform in that next week, whether it was our game or whether it was their game. So we pulled him out and we put him on a recovery protocol for around 10 days into that international break, and he came back and has been fresh. But he's someone that we keep a close eye on all of them, so it's probably wrong to say we keep a closer eye on him, but
it's just a unique situation.
It's just a unique situation. So we certainly look at all his training loads in more care, and you've got to remember he's 17. He's still not even allowed to change in the dressing room at the same time as some of the other players with a child protection policy, etc. And we've got to make sure that we have a child protection officer on our away trips, and someone goes and checks his room just to make sure that no one's hiding in there before they arrive. So all these bits that go around it, and Archie, he just takes it all under his wing. He breezes along like he's done it for years.
It looks like he does on the pitch.
Yeah, he's so confident and so good at what he does that why should anything bother you if you've got that ability?
Right. Well, speaking of overtraining and overplaying. Obviously, during the Bielsa era, that was a criticism that was maybe levelled at Leeds quite a lot through pundits and various other medias and spectators and whatnot, and suggested that we were getting more injuries and burnout and all the rest of it. Like, what was your take on that? Obviously, we know Bielsa trained them hard. We know murder ball happened and all the rest of it. But what was your take on that and the criticisms that were levelled at yourself and Leeds?
Yeah, I think there's. When any manager comes in and when anyone, we have a discussion of what the risk parameters look like, and we also look at what they want to achieve. Now, Marcelo's style of play, the players had to be phenomenally fit. You saw our sprint distances, you saw our high speed. I mean, we're off the chart. So to gain that, you have to really, really push the players into areas that no other club does and nowhere else goes. But we accepted that as a club. So that was a discussion, Marcelo said, this is our play, this is what I do. And we accepted the risk, the club accepted the risk. There was never any disharmony within the club, from the board to the medical department to the science department to Marcelo, because we knew how we had to train to achieve how he wanted to play. Now, to work at those thresholds, there's a risk that you get more injuries. But we accepted that, and were able to push through. And what we generally did, he also ran with a really small squad. He didn't want too many players available, so he didn't really have the opportunity to take people in or out to protect them. So what we focused on a lot with Marcelo is, we did pick up a few more injuries, but not anything that's out of this world. Again, coming back to, let's make sure we can get them back quickly, and let's make sure that when they come back, they're fit to keep going, and let's make sure that they're ready to go, as in our rehab processes, were of the same level and same intensity as his training, so that they could just fit in and go from there. And we'd done, before Marcelo arrived, we'd done quite a bit of research and looked at what injury patterns he'd had at his previous clubs. And then we looked and we then put in a prevention program that was focused most around those areas. So we'd find out that when he was in Spain, they'd had a lot of injuries around the pelvis and the hips and in the abdominals. So we did a lot of work to try and prevent that.
Wow.
And it's almost impossible to know if what you did was successful, because you never do a control group. You don't say to half the team, look, we're going to do this, and you half just get on with it. Let's see how you get on. And also, Marcelo had never been 4 years anywhere before. And there's that intensity for that period of time. is difficult for anybody to sustain. We're in a really difficult place in football. We have to peak every 3 days or every 7 days. If you're an athlete, you peak for an Olympics every 4 years, and if you're a tennis player, you've got 4 majors that you need to peak for a year. So you can actually take people in and out. Every game is 3 points. Every game is as important as the other. You don't get more points if you beat Man United than you do if you beat someone else.
Right.
So every game is still of the same importance. And the philosophy under Marcelo was you're as likely to beat Man United as you are to beat whoever was bottom of the table. So we don't treat any game any differently. It's not that we're going to rotate and change things to make sure that they're okay in the next week. Some of the indicators for does somebody get injured, age and previous injury are two of the two highest predictors of does someone get injured. So our squad gets older, and they've also picked up a few injuries along the line because of the way that we played and trained. And a lot of those injuries weren't necessarily overuse injuries. So everyone thinks, oh, Marcelo, we got loads of hamstrings. We didn't really. We got a lot of contact injuries because we used to go and press the death out of people, and we used to go and run into them.
Right.
And we just got contact. We probably got more fractures, we got more knee injuries, we got more ankle injuries than anything else. It wasn't the soft tissue injuries that you can avoid. And then pretty similar under Jesse as well. Jesse was a high press, all in, and we picked up again more contact injuries that, unless you change your style of play, are not really avoidable.
Listening on together.
COVID as well. I mean, that must have been incredibly difficult for you guys to work around. What was that entire process like?
Look, I mean, it was... we look back at it now and you can't remember how difficult it was. The risk, we were coming towards the end of that championship season, and we discussed this a lot, that we'd had preparations in for January. But when it actually shut down after that Huddersfield game, was a real difficult time because we just didn't know how long it was going to last. And we pushed our players individually to extremes. The programs they got sent at home, they came back in absolutely flying when we returned in June, July. And, I was in the training room. We still had some injured players at that time that we rehabbed through. So there was me, there was our rehab fitness coach, there was one of our physios who were in the training ground every day. And we were allowed to bring these players in on an individual basis and work with them. And I think one of the things there, we'd actually got to a stage where Ben White was injured in that Huddersfield game and probably wouldn't have played the next few games. But we rehabbed him over the COVID, and then he came back and played at the end. So for him, it came at a really good time. But then all the protocols that went with it, and trying to make sure that your team didn't contract COVID, or if anyone did get it, it didn't spread. That was the hardest part, because we knew with our squad, if we lost 2 or 3 players, we were going to be in real trouble. So Rishi, who's our club doc as well, spent a lot of time. We were really strict on our protocols just to make sure that we could get through and finish the season. And Marcelo was here every day. He was knocking about, just making sure that the players were training properly, and that everything was, they were still sending the weights in every day. Every morning when they woke up, we were getting a screenshot of the weights, and we just didn't want anything to slip that was going to derail that promotion season.
Mm-hmm. Well, thankfully, it all went according to plan. We talked about the fitness of the players during that era. How do they compare to now? Because obviously, it seems like Farke likes to play a similar high-intensity game as Bielsa, maybe not quite the same levels, but they look pretty fit this year as well. How do they compare? Yeah,
they're good. Look, I think, even the players have said it, their general fitness levels last season dropped off, and that wasn't. We were trying to push that from the backroom staff, but ultimately, a lot of the training comes down to what the coach wants to do in those sessions. Yeah. But we pushed, but then we decided over the summer, before we knew who was going to be our new manager this year, that we were going to give the lads a program that meant that whoever was coming back in to take them, they were going to be at a really good level. So we gave the players around 10 days off. after the last game, after Tottenham, and then they were sent programs. And almost like the COVID era, they had to screenshot every day and send in what they were doing. And we did really specific programs that were almost back to the Bielsa days, because we know of what levels they were at. So they came back in for pre-season in a really good condition. And Daniel and his staff only arrived. We only had a 5-week pre-season this year, which is a week less than we probably normally would with the coaching staff. But because we'd done as much of the background and the prep work before they arrived, they were in a good condition when the coaching staff arrived. And his staff and his fitness coach, Chris, have been excellent. They know how he wants to play, and they know what they need to achieve to allow the players to do that. And we've actually got a real synergy between the Leeds staff and Daniel's staff, that our principles and our beliefs of what the fitness level should be are at the same level. So it's nice to work within that environment.
What's it like when a new coach comes in? I mean, do you have to go in the office with like a dossier on every player and sort of explain what they can do, what maybe might be a bit detrimental to their bodies? Have you got to go and lay all that out?
Yeah, look, we do a deck before they arrive, and we send them all the information before they get there. That's, what their availability's been, what injuries they've had, what their training load needs to be. We go through all the GPS from every game for the last few years to say this is what they can achieve, this is what our training weeks have looked like. So that they get all that information, and then before they arrive, and then we firm that up. Usually on day 1, day 2, chats. But the chats on day 1, day 2 are probably not that much different to the ones we still have now after however many weeks that they've been here, because communication is probably the biggest part, or the biggest thing that achieves with the players. We've got to get everything right behind the scenes to allow the players to achieve on the pitch.
And what about new signings? Are you involved with kind of the scouting process to a degree? Like, is there a player that you can go, yeah, I know you like the look of him, but he's high risk, his hamstring could go at any moment. Are you involved across that?
We do. We certainly do a checkup on all the players before they arrive. Now, we're looking to actually improve that even further with some of the stuff that we're doing with the new ownership group, with some more analytics that's now available to us. But we contact the previous club, we get all their GPS records, we do searches, we do social media searches to look at what this player has been like, etc. And then we do a pretty comprehensive medical when they arrive. So they spend a couple of hours in the scanner where we scan the back, the pelvis, the hips, the knees and their ankles, and we have a look through that. They then spend more time with the medical staff who do a hands-on assessment of them. We bring all that data together, and we try and come up with a risk profile for that player to give to the board. And you hear of people, has he failed a medical? No one really fails a medical, because everybody has a risk when you sign them.
Sure.
It's just what risk are the club willing to accept? And then we discuss that with the board and with the manager, and they decide. We might say, look, this player's high risk. He's only played 50% of games in the last 2 years. On his scan, we found this in his knee, and this has this percentage chance of getting worse over this amount of time. Are you willing to take that risk? And that might then go back into negotiations. It might be the contract changes in terms of when they play. But we just give all that information back to try and make it a safer process for the club, so that they don't sign anyone who's particularly crocked. But obviously, you can do as much as you want, and then the next week someone can do their ACL, or they can do whatever. Accidents and injuries happen, but as long as you've excluded anything that is predisposing to that, you've done your job.
Well, before I let you go, I mean, obviously it'll probably be the boss's job to talk about this, so they may well cut this and that'll be fine. We've talked about Pat, and we've talked about Stewie, and obviously Cooper getting back yesterday in the game was really important for us, as it turned out. How's Jed Spence looking?
Look, Jed was really unfortunate. So last week he's gone into a challenging training. His foot slipped from underneath him, and he's ruptured his lateral ligament of his knee. Now, these, again, I've just been talking, you say, 90% of them do this. 90% of these heal pretty well within 8 weeks. And we do some injections to try and promote the healing in that area, and we protect it. And then his rehab is based on that. So at the minute, he's a week into this. And we're just progressing really, really slowly. But it's a freak accident. We said it could have happened to anyone. His foot slips, and it slips as he's in a challenge. Someone falls on his leg and pushes him into a level where the ligament can't tolerate it. Yeah. So it snaps. But what I would say about him, as with all the players already, his attitude to doing what's right and to making sure that he's going to be okay has been first class. So we'll build him up over the next few weeks, and we hope that he lies in that 90% who get better within the 8 weeks. If it doesn't, there's things we can do beyond that, but there's certainly nothing extra you do at this stage when he's got the good chance of being back in with us sometime in, what will that be, in November.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to it very much. I'll give you one last opportunity to not drop anyone in it, because that's not what we're doing on the official Leeds United podcast, but you can give someone props. Who is the absolute best of the bleep test? Who's at the very top?
Oh, no. To be honest, I can't remember who even came top this year.
I mean, you can tell us the worst if you want.
No, do you know who's surprisingly good at the bleep test? Is Liam Cooper.
I've heard this, actually.
He has an ability to change direction, but he does that really well, and that gives him a great advantage. The ones who are a little bit sloppy on the turn struggle.
Interesting.
So yeah, he's the one who you would be surprised if he was at the top, but he's always up there. But if I give you one name, all the other players will complain because they'll say it's them.
They will.
So I'm not going to give myself that problem tomorrow morning.
We'll just go with Captain Coops can change direction quickly. That'll do. Well, we appreciate this so much, Rob. That was really, really insightful. That was fascinating. I think people are going to really, really love that. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's late, so I'll let you go. And best of luck with everything.
Thanks, Matt.
This is the official Leeds United podcast.